Hey guys, this is Joe from Analog Archive, back from the vinyl video. Today's video is going to be contribution not to the 1500 series, but for the 4100 series project that's been ongoing with Sherv, Julius Strabar, and Dave, Local Bandography, kind of taking the lead and being the ones that have started and continued this great project. The one that I'm going to be showing today, 4196, Blue Spirits, Freddie Hubbard. I think aside from this one, the only other 4100 series one that I've shown was 4106, which was Let Freedom Ring, Jackie McLean. Just an incredible session there. But this album, Blue Spirits, it's got a pretty large lineup that's broken into two different sessions. Which was very common, especially in the 4100 series. You see a lot like No Room for Squares had different playing on it, different players depending on what session date they were at. But this one's got a real large lineup. You've got Freddie Hubbard on trumpet, James Spaulding is on alto sax and flute, Joe Henderson's on the tenor sax, Kian Zawadi is on euphonium, Harold Mayburn Jr. is on piano, Larry Ridley's on bass, Clifford Jarvis is on drums, and Big Black is on conga. And they are featured on 2 of the 5 tracks on the album, on the opening song, on the A side called Soul Surge, and then the second song on the B side, which is called Conga Black. And then the other 3 songs on the album still have Freddie Hubbard on trumpet, James Spaulding on alto sax and flute, but you've now got Hank Mobley on tenor sax. So that was one of the big reasons why I purchased this, along with just my love for Freddie Hubbard, is that Hank Mobley is quickly becoming one of my favorite tenor sax players, so really enjoy having him on this and seeing him on this session. Kian Zawadi is still on euphonium, McCoy Tyner is now on the piano, Bob Cranshaw's on the bass, and Pete LaRocca's on the drums. So you've got a few players that crossed into both sessions, but you've also got some new players, which again adds a nice contrast to that. So this was recorded February 1965, and then it didn't come out until February of 1967. So there's a 2-year gap for whatever reason between when it was recorded and when it actually came out. This is also one of the few pre-Liberty era recordings by Blue Note that does not have the plastylate P or the ear that's in the dead wax. So even original pressings do not have the P in them. So again, the earliest pressings 1967, and so by that point, by the time it was released, they had already moved to the all-disc pressing plant, so there was not going to be the P anymore. So all 5 tracks are Freddie Hubbard originals. Very impressive to have really all the tracks be by one person. So that definitely added a nice piece to it. And this is also going to be Freddie Hubbard's last session that came out for Blue Note by the time it was released. So he did have a few albums that came out after this, like Night of the Cookers Volume 1, Volume 2. I'm trying to think if those might be the only ones left, because those came out in 65. So he was getting to the end of it, but by the time this was actually released, he had already moved to Atlantic and had already recorded his first album for Atlantic. So he'd already kind of moved on by the time this had come out. And the closing track, Jodo, which we'll get to in a bit, but one note on that is that it's also featured on Night of the Cookers Volume 2, which is a live session that was, I think it was recorded in 65 and then came out later in 65, but this is a shortened version of it. It's only, shortened, but it's 7-8 minutes long, and on the live version it's like a 15 or 20 minute track. So definitely recommend checking out Jodo, contrasting the one that's on here to the live recording on Night of the Cookers Volume 2. And then the only other piece of information that I found that was interesting about this album was that Kian Zawadi, actually that was not his original name. On early sessions, including Freddie Hubbard's Ready for Freddie session in 1962, he went by Bernard McKinney. So, and he's also been on, he was on a few other sessions. You'll see that name, Bernard McKinney. I think he was on, I can't think of an album that I have, but he was actually on trombone on one of the tracks. But on this one, he's playing the euphonium, and so that's kind of changed his name, and then also stuck with the euphonium through the album. So to get to the tracks, again, there's 5 tracks, all of them being written by Freddie Hubbard. The first one is called Soul Surge, and you hear the conga on this one, which again, for the 2 tracks that's featured on, it's a very prominent instrument, even though it's in the background for the most part on those tracks. It's got a very laid-back vibe, at least at the beginning, but then Freddie Hubbard comes in and it's just a lot of energy, real loud, quick succession of notes that he plays. It's insane, and you definitely can hear, especially for the people that have heard a lot of Freddie Hubbard's albums, even past his Blue Note stuff with like Atlantic, CTI, and into the 70s, that he is starting to move in that direction of that post-bop, that's not always straight ahead, that there is him kind of trailing off in different directions with different sounds. But you start to hear that a little bit on that one, but he's at this point, he's still coming back to that hard bop sound, but really enjoyable solo by him. James Spaulding plays the sax on that one, and he is featured on all 5 of the tracks, and 3 of the tracks he plays alto sax, and 2 he plays the flute. Real great contrast in those instruments, but on this one he plays the alto sax. Great tone to his solo, really in your face, very direct, and it sounds great. Harold Mayburn Jr. is great on the piano on that one. Throughout the melody that's playing while others are soloing, he's really hitting those keys pretty hard, and it's really enjoyable for the piano playing by him. And yeah, so that's just a great opening track, very quick. It starts out a little bit slower, more laid back, and then it picks up the pace pretty quick once the solos start. You then get to the second song that's on the B-side, or the closing song, that's called Blue Spirit, so the title track. This one has more of a swinging mid-tempo to it as well. James Spaulding's playing the flute on that one, and this also is now the second lineup, so you've got Hank Mobley now on tenor sax, McCoy Tyner's on the piano, Bob Cranshaw bass, and then Pete LaRocca on the drums. So in terms of the solos that you're hearing Freddie Hubbard, Spaulding, Mobley, and McCoy Tyner on that one. And just a really great opening solo by James Spaulding. He kind of flutters with the flute a little bit at the beginning of the solo. It's a really nice sound to it and a great way to kind of start the track. Freddie Hubbard again comes in, real loud, monstrous tone and sound to his solo, but it's just incredible. He goes a little bit more into that post-bop sound on this one as well, a little bit farther than he did on that first track, the Soul Surge. And then Hank Mobley is a great addition on this track. Joe Henderson was great on Soul Surge, but he has a much more laid back, even live recordings, if you've seen of Joe Henderson, on many of the sessions, he took a more laid back approach to his solos. He was, he did kind of have that energy to him, that ability to quickly play, but on this one he was a little bit more laid back, especially compared to Hank Mobley. But you can hear that tone of Hank Mobley really well on that track. You then get to the opening song on the B-side. It's called Outer Forces. The name is going to suggest a lot about what the track is like. This one is probably the most out there of any of the tracks on the album. Again, it's not moving into the avant-garde or anything, but it does have a post-bop sound to it, much greater than the other ones. Song starts out with this fluttering of playing between Hubbard and James Spaulding, and just really great playing as well on that. And you got Hank Mobley coming in as well on the tenor sax, just great solo there. And just, yeah, this is just a great track. Freddie Hubbard and James Spaulding took more of that post-bop sound, not really always staying aligned with the melody per se, but then Hank Mobley comes in and he sticks to what he's always been really good at with the hard bop sound. Very straight ahead and really enjoyable by him. We then get to the second song on the B side that's called Conga Black, and that again will have the first lineup again. So you've got Joe Henderson on the tenor sax, you've got Harold Mayburn Jr. on the piano, Larry Ridley on bass, Clifford Jarvis drums, and then most importantly you've got Big Black on the conga again. He's got a prominent sound to this, very well known right from the beginning, the conga sound, and this is more of a little bit more of a kind of a bluesy almost sound to it, especially Freddie Hubbard's solo, very soulful, very bluesy sound to it. James Spaulding is great on the flute on that one, so that's the other track that he's playing the flute, and just really enjoyable there as well. And then a great solo by Larry Ridley. Again, I've said in other videos, the bass is not always an instrument that I'm always listening for, but on this one especially, Larry Ridley has a great bass solo, real instrumental, very calculated solo, and it's pushed to maybe a quicker tempo than it may be by Big Black on the conga. Just really pushing that tempo, and it's very impressive and real great sound to that. And then you finally get to the closing track that I've already talked a little bit about, Jodo, and that one is probably the most hard bop sound and track of all the ones that are on the album. That's also the one that I enjoy the most. Makes sense because I have always gravitated towards hard bop. That's been the main types of albums and subgenre that I enjoy of jazz. But really great solos all around. Freddie Hubbard is incredible on that one. Very upbeat, very loud, more straight ahead again solo by him, but just really enjoyable overall. Hank Mobley is great on that one as well, and especially James Spaulding on alto sax. It's an incredible sound. James Spaulding is incredible, and it would have been great to see him have some of his own sessions, or at least that. I'm not even really actually terribly familiar with what the output of James Spaulding is. I know that he worked extensively with Freddie Hubbard, and I've seen him maybe on a few other sessions in the later 60s, but I can't recall exactly where I've seen him, other than again on some of these Freddie Hubbard albums that I have. But his solo is great on the alto sax. Hank Mobley follows that up, great tenor sax playing, and just a really enjoyable one, and just a great partnership between those front three hornmen. So but yep, so that's Blue Spirits, Freddie Hubbard, Blue Note 4196. I have most of Freddie Hubbard's. Actually, I have all of Freddie Hubbard's Blue Note stuff except for Night of the Cookers Volume 1. And of all of Freddie's sessions on Blue Note, I would say this is probably in the top 3. Ready for Freddie, not Ready for Freddie. Open Sesame is probably my favorite, and then it's probably Ready for Freddie, and then this one. But even though this one was recorded a little bit later, not till 1965, it's got a very familiar feeling to it. The players, again, it's just incredible musicians. You got Freddie Hubbard's, James Spaulding, Joe Henderson, Harold Mayburn Jr., Clifford Jarvis, Hank Mobley, McCoy Tyner, Bob Cranshaw, Pete LaRocque. I mean, it's almost every single player on here was a very successful, very prominent jazz musician, and their contributions to this album were all incredible. So a great album again overall. My copy I picked up last fall when I was kind of on the Freddie Hubbard acquisition train. Is it's a Liberty pressing, Liberty stereo. It sounds incredible. It's one of the cleanest Blue Note records that I have in my collection, and one that I recently came back to be able to speak about it for this video, but one that I will be going back to even more, because again, it's an incredible album. If you ever see it, you got to pick it up. It's not one of the most expensive Freddie Hubbard albums. You can get one for probably a reasonable price, so just make sure you keep your eyes out for it. A great later era Blue Note session. So again, Blue Spirits, Freddie Hubbard, 4196. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed, please think about liking and subscribing, and I will be back soon for another Vinyl Finds video. Yeah, till then,